Hello, and thank you for joining our Customer Experience 5 and 15 webinar today. I'm Kelsey Lockman, Content Marketing Manager here at Kapost, and I'm joined by my fellow Content Marketing Manager, Erica Lindberg, who will be sharing some invaluable and actionable insights based on her recent research of marketing in the customer experience. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. This webinar is just a quick 5 and 15 minutes, but we welcome questions. You can submit them in the chat box on the left-hand side of your screen at any point during the presentation. We'll go ahead and flag them. If we don't have time to get to your question during the webinar, we'll provide answers in our published SlideShare deck shortly after, and you can find that on our Kapost SlideShare account. And with that, I'll let Erica take it away.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me today. This is a 15-minute webinar, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. So last quarter, I conducted an online survey to identify and benchmark the key indicators of B2B customer experience success. What we wanted to find out was what are the trends and tactics that actually drive an effective customer experience, and what are the major barriers to success? What we found was that 85% of B2B marketers agree that consistency across content is the backbone of an effective customer experience. But what does that mean? So when we think about the customer's journey, we know customers are interacting with content at every stage of their buying journey, from investigation to consideration, all the way to a possible purchase. And content guides that journey. When teams that oversee these various stages of the buying journey, whether it's top-of-funnel content on a blog or a product one-pager, are working in silos, the story becomes disjointed. So to really deliver an effective customer experience, content needs to be consistent in telling the same story at every customer interaction. So this is really why marketing needs to be managing the entire customer experience, because who is responsible for creating most of the content within an organization? Marketing. And our research actually validates this. 63% of top performers, those who rated themselves as very effective at delivering consistent customer experiences, hold marketing accountable. So let's go ahead and jump into the 5 ways that marketing can begin to take control of the customer experience. So first, there are some foundational barriers that we as marketers really need to address. Inefficient internal processes is the #1 barrier to successfully delivering an effective customer experience, followed by lack of alignment across teams and inadequate data insights. So what we're really talking about here is a coordination and handoff issue. Siloed teams don't know who's creating what, and content consumers, our sales teams or customer support teams, don't know what content is available to them, where to access it, or how to use it. So how do we fix this? At the highest level, it's really about making content visible. The majority of marketers are still living in what we call content chaos. Content is being created, but we don't know why or where it is. So we really need to focus on making everything highly visible. So this is how you're going to have consistent messaging across every interaction, because teams aren't guessing anymore. They can find the content and they know how to use it and when to use it. So to do this, first we need to get our content in front of our content consumers. So by now I think we have all heard the Serious Decisions stat that 69% of content goes unused. Well, that's because they can't find it. Marketers need to enable their content consumers to easily access their content by keeping it all in a single location that's easily searchable, content's tagged, you can search by a persona, pain point, things like that. This is really going to help us get our other teams using this content to tell that consistent story. Because what's happened in the past is marketing creates all of this content, but no one else can find it. So people start creating their own content completely ad hoc. And when this happens, consistency totally starts to break down. At Kapost, we use a gallery to share content with sales. We can create different collections and tag all of our content so it's easy to find what they're looking for. This way, if a lead comes in through a specific ebook, a salesperson following up can find that pillar campaign in our gallery and find all of the other assets associated with that ebook. so they can continue the conversation but still tell the same story. And it's a story that we know the customer is interested in because they self-selected that ebook to read. The second piece of this is getting all of our marketing plans and timelines across campaigns and initiatives onto one single calendar, which brings us to our next tactic, using a shared editorial calendar to plan content. So 92% of top performers have this. They have a shared editorial calendar for planning marketing initiatives. We need to get all of our marketing plans, whether it's an event, the blog, a demand gen campaign, onto a single calendar. And our research shows that top performers are over 3 times more likely to have visibility into their plans and content because they have this. So when we think of this in terms of the customer experience, we know different teams are responsible for different pieces, whether you're in demand gen responsible for nurture emails or an events coordinator running webinars. And when all of your plans and timelines exist on the same calendar, it's much easier to get a sense of how often you're communicating with customers, and then you can begin to thread the same story across all of those touch points. If there's an event coming up, talk about it on your blog, include it in your nurtures. This will also reduce the amount of redundant work. When you can look at a calendar and see all of the content and campaigns being worked on, it's much easier to see where your piece fits in the story and identify if 2 teams are working on a very similar asset. So really getting all of your marketing plans in one place will empower you and your teams to tell one story and operate much more efficiently. So make sure your marketing calendar is easy to access, shared internally, and that it can update in real time so stakeholders are getting accurate and up-to-date information. Our third tactic is creating targeted persona-driven content hubs. By now, most marketers know they need to create buyer-centric content versus product-centric content. But something marketers can do to really amplify the customer experience and gain a lot of insight into the customer experience is to create persona-driven content hubs. Content hubs should act as a valuable resource and give your customers a reason to keep coming back to your site. The image you see here is of the Kapost Resource Center, where we house all of our external-facing assets. Prospects and customers can come here to find thought leadership, research, webinars, and more. This gives visitors a chance to self-select content and self-educate. And what you can learn from this is customer preferences by tracking which assets are getting the most engagement, and then cycle that information back to all of your teams. Because when we're thinking in terms of the customer experience, we need to think beyond that single interaction. The insights you learn through a content hub can then be incorporated into all of the content you're creating. It can influence sales messaging, web messaging, blog posts, ebooks. It really lets you know what topics and content types are resonating best with your audiences. And then you can incorporate that and optimize your customer experience. So our next point, crowdsource ideas internally for themes, topics, and channels. So marketing isn't the only team learning about customer preferences. If marketing is going to manage the overall customer experience, it's imperative to have a process in place for gathering ideas from other internal teams. The information your sales and support teams are learning about your customers is incredibly valuable, and you want to make sure you're capturing this information so you can incorporate it back into your content. So to start doing this, the first thing you want to do is set up an editorial board. This board should include someone from every team within your organization, not just sales and customer success. Product and engineering, or any teams that you have within your company should be a part of this. The editorial board should meet about once a quarter to review old content, see how it performed, and then use those insights to approve new ideas that are coming through. So if you're reviewing old content and a specific content type is doing really well, or a specific topic, then when you're looking at the ideas that have been submitted by your teams, you're probably going to want to approve ideas around that topic or content type. Second, you need a way to submit and review these ideas, a process for this. At Kapost, we have this function built into our platform, so it's easy to submit an idea and then somebody can go in and review and then either approve or deny it. But if you don't have to post, you could use a shared Google spreadsheet to begin collecting ideas. And that brings us to our fifth point here. If marketing is really going to take control of the customer experience, we have to be able to prove our value. The good news is most marketers are already thinking this way. Lead generation and revenue ranked as the top marketing priorities for 2016. The problem is only 41% of marketers are actually executing data-driven strategies. Luckily, there are a few ways to get started that anybody can do. First, set measurable goals for each content asset and campaign. Doing this will help you track towards something and set performance benchmarks. It's important to think of every content asset as a valuable business asset. You want to know how it's performing. Make sure you document these goals and benchmarks as well, so you can go back and see what you were tracking toward and what you actually did, and then you can create new goals based off of that. Second, make sure you're tracking the right KPIs. Page views and downloads can give marketers insight into buyer preferences, but these kinds of metrics are incredibly difficult to tie back to revenue. Marketers want to start thinking about conversions between buying cycles. Think which content converted a lead to an MQL, what content did a salesperson use to schedule a demo, was there a specific PowerPoint that closed a deal? These are the kinds of metrics you want to be tracking if you're really going to prove the value of marketing. And lastly, adjust and document your strategy based on these insights. This point is so important. If you have data to back up your strategy and can prove your iterations are moving the needle, you will not only see conversion rates increase and thus be able to attribute your efforts to more revenue, but you'll actually get the buy-in you need from within your organization to manage this customer experience. And with that, back to you, Kelsey.
Awesome. Gives us 3 minutes to answer questions. So we've had a couple come through. If you have any that have popped into your head, feel free to go ahead and still submit them. We should have time. So the first one, I'm going to go ahead and answer. We got a question right around, I think it was like the second point regarding the editorial calendar, and someone wanted to know what platform we use for our editorial calendar. We, of course, use Compose, which is it has a dynamic editorial calendar that syncs up with all of our content currently being created, planned, distributed straight within the platform. But it also can track some other kind of more task-oriented initiatives as well. So that's what we use. You can definitely use something like a Google shared doc, but we find that the dynamic editorial calendar tends to allow us to scale content and get things visible across integrated teams. So super helpful and saves you from having to jump from like platform to platform. So we love it. And we'll have a webinar on our editorial calendar coming up in June, so be on the lookout for that.
And I think what's really important to think about when we talk about this single calendar for all of your marketing plans, what's important here is to get these kind of layers of visibility. So you want to be able to see how things are doing on an initiative level, a campaign level, and also a task level, so that your executives can see how you're tracking towards completing an initiative, and then more on your manager level, you can manage tasks and workflow and actually make sure that and see where content is in production. So I think that's what's key here to get the visibility that you need to manage something this big, is seeing what your plans are on those 3 levels. And those 3 levels, again, are initiative, campaign, and then a content piece, and then the task associated with that content piece.
Perfect. All right, looks like we have time for one more quick question. How do you prevent sales or customer support from hijacking and potentially disrupting that consistent customer experience?
I think this is a really good question and something that a lot of marketers are dealing with. And really the only answer for this is you need to make it really easy for your teams to use your content. It needs to be easy to find, and then they need to understand how to use it and why they're using it. And I think that why is a really big point. If you can hand a piece of content to your teams and explain why this is valuable and why they should be using it, then they're likely going to use it. If you can't explain why and you're in disagreement, that's when people start to just create their own content, that and when they can't find it. So I think the two most important pieces here are they need to be able to find it really easily, and you need to tell them the why and the how of that content piece.
Awesome. All right, well that brings us to 15 minutes. Thank you to Erica for joining us today, and thank you to our listeners for joining us as well. We hope you learned a lot of really valuable information. I know I did. I always do when I listen about Erica's research. As a reminder, you'll be able to access the entire full webinar recorded on demand. You should have a link coming through your email soon. And then also be on the lookout for the Kapos SlideShare deck to be uploaded. And if you want to find more about this awesome research that Erica conducted, you'll see that full link right there, that bit.ly/cx_research. And then you can also find more research and tons of other information on the Kapos blog. So thanks again, and have an awesome Wednesday.